Imagine a lavish palace where kings proclaim themselves the sun, spending millions of golden livres to turn dreams of power into reality. But behind the gilded walls and the perfect gardens of Versailles lay a ticking time bomb. Enormous costs that plunged France into mounting debt, igniting a revolution that changed history. Did you know that the construction alone devoured a quarter of the national budget? Stay tuned to uncover the hidden costs that toppled an empire and the lessons for today. In the quiet expanse of the Île-de-France region, where dense forests once cloaked the landscape in untamed mystery, a simple brick and stone hunting lodge rose in 1623 under the direction of King Louis XIII. This modest retreat, perched amid marshy grounds and frequented by royal huntsmen pursuing deer and boar, bore little resemblance to the grandeur that would soon envelop it. Yet it was here, in this unpretentious setting, that the seeds of one of history's most audacious architectural endeavors were sown. By the mid-17th century, as Louis XIV ascended the throne at the tender age of 4, the site at Versailles began its metamorphosis into a symbol of unassailable monarchical power, a place where stone, water, and greenery conspired to articulate the divine right of kings. The palace, expanded through successive campaigns of construction, became a canvas upon which the Sun King painted his vision of absolute authority, drawing upon the talents of architects like Louis Lavaux, Jules Ardouin-Mansart, and landscape designer André Lenotre to forge a realm where every vista and corridor whispered of royal supremacy. The architectural symbolism embedded in Versailles was deliberate and profound, reflecting Louis XIV's self-identification as the embodiment of the state. From the outset, the palace's design invoked classical antiquity and mythological grandeur, with the figure of Apollo, the Greek god of the sun, arts, and prophecy, serving as the king's personal emblem. This motif adorned fountains, sculptures, and interiors, culminating in the Apollo Basin, where a gilded statue of the god emerged triumphantly from the waters, symbolizing the monarch's role as the radiant center of French life. The facade of the palace itself, stretching over 670 meters in length, presented a facade of harmonious symmetry, its central pavilion crowned by a clock flanked by allegorical figures of peace and war, underscoring the king's dual role as benevolent ruler and formidable warrior. Such elements were not mere decoration. They were instruments of propaganda, designed to impress foreign dignitaries and subdue domestic nobles, reminding all who gazed upon them that the king's power was as eternal and ordered as the cosmos itself. The Hall of Mirrors, completed in 1684, epitomized this symbolism, its 17 arched windows mirroring 17 arcades of crystal and gold, flooded with light that evoked the sun's unyielding brilliance, while the vaulted ceiling depicted Louis's military triumphs in vivid frescoes by Charles Lebrun. Spatial authority at Versailles was wielded through the meticulous orchestration of scale and perspective, transforming the estate into a microcosm of centralized governance. The gardens, spanning over 800 hectares, were laid out in a rigid geometric pattern that imposed human will upon nature's chaos, with long alleys radiating from the palace like rays from the sun, guiding the eye and the visitor inexorably back to the royal core. Lenotre's design employed optical illusions, such as tapering pathways that exaggerated distances, to create an illusion of infinite dominion, mirroring the king's ambition to extend his influence across Europe. Within the palace, the enfilade of rooms, aligned doors opening one upon another, allowed the king to survey his court from afar, enforcing a hierarchy where proximity to the monarch denoted status and favor. Nobles, compelled to reside at Versailles rather than their distant chateau, navigated this space under constant observation, their lives reduced to rituals of levees and cowsures that reinforced the king's paternal oversight. This spatial control extended to the very layout of the town of Versailles, which grew symmetrically around the palace, its avenues converging on the royal residence like tributaries to a mighty river, ensuring that all aspects of life orbited the throne. The historical atmosphere of Versailles in the late 17th century was one of immersive splendor, where the air hummed with the orchestration of courtly existence amid an ever-evolving backdrop of construction and refinement. Mornings dawned with the king's public awakening, a ceremony attended by select courtiers in the opulent bedchamber, its walls draped in crimson damask and gold embroidery that caught the first light filtering through tall windows. The scent of fresh blooms from the orangery mingled with the aroma of elaborate banquets, while the sounds of Vivaldi's compositions or Lully's operas echoed through the salons, fostering an environment of cultured refinement that masked the underlying mechanisms of control. Yet this atmosphere was not static. It evolved through the 18th century under Louis XV and Louis XVI, as additions like the Petit Trianon introduced notes of intimate escape amid the grandeur, even as the palace's maintenance demanded ever greater resources from a kingdom grappling with colonial wars and agricultural hardships. The vast workforce, up to 36,000 laborers at peak construction, brought a cacophony of hammers and carts to the site, their efforts channeling rivers, draining marshes, and transplanting mature trees to realize the king's vision, all while the court indulged in masquerades and fireworks that illuminated the night sky, casting long shadows over the financial burdens accumulating in the treasury's ledgers. As the palace grew, its symbolic weight deepened, intertwining with the fabric of French identity. The Grand Canal, a cross-shaped waterway stretching 1.6 kilometers, not only provided a venue for naval spectacles, but also evoked the king's global aspirations, with mock battles reenacting triumphs over rivals like the Dutch or English. Interiors like the Salon de Venus, with its marble statues and painted ceilings depicting mythological love, humanized the divine king, blending authority with an aura of benevolence. However, this immersion in luxury carried subtle undercurrents of tension. The rigid etiquette enforced by spatial divisions, such as the Aile de Boeuf antechamber, where nobles awaited audiences, bred resentment among those whose fortunes waned in service to the court. By the mid-18th century, under Louis XV, the atmosphere shifted slightly toward Rococo elegance, with softer curves and pastel hues softening the Baroque severity. Yet the core symbolism remained, a testament to monarchical endurance amid mounting fiscal pressures from wars and expansions. Beneath the gilded surfaces and meticulously pruned parterres of Versailles lay a labyrinth of financial commitments that began to strain the sinews of the French monarchy from the moment Louis XIV committed to its expansion in the 1660s. What started as an enhancement to a humble hunting lodge escalated into a perpetual construction site, with annual expenditures peaking at around 25 million livres during the height of building campaigns in the 1670s and 1680s, a sum that represented up to a quarter of the kingdom's total revenue in certain years. These funds, drawn from a treasury reliant on regressive taxes like the taille imposed on peasants and the gabelle on salt, fueled the importation of marble from Italy, glass from Venice, and tapestries from Flemish workshops, while thousands of artisans labored under the oversight of the surintendant des bâtiments du roi, Jean-Baptiste Colbert. The king's vision demanded not only architectural splendor, but also the relocation of entire rivers to supply the fountains, a feat that required innovative hydraulic engineering and vast sums for pumps and aqueducts, such as the Machine de Marly, which alone cost over 5 million livres to construct and maintain. As the palace swelled to encompass over 700 rooms and 2,000 windows, each addition, from the grand apartments to the opera house, compounded the drain on resources, intertwining the monarchy's prestige with an ever-growing ledger of debts that Colbert meticulously recorded, warning in private correspondences of the perils of unchecked ambition. The financial architecture of Versailles mirrored the palace's physical design in its centralized control, yet it revealed fractures in the kingdom's economic foundation that would widen over decades. Louis XIV's absolutism centralized tax collection through intendants dispatched to provinces, aiming to bypass noble interference and fund both the court and military ventures, but the palace's demands often diverted revenues intended for infrastructure or debt repayment. By the 1680s, as wars like the 9 Years' War loomed, the annual maintenance of Versailles, encompassing salaries for 2,000 courtiers, fuel for 1,200 fireplaces, and provisions for lavish fetes, consumed approximately 10% of the state budget, exacerbating deficits that forced the issuance of rentes and loans from financiers at exorbitant interest rates. These obligations created a cycle of borrowing, where short-term gains masked long-term insolvency. For instance, the sale of offices and venal positions to nobles eager for court proximity generated immediate influxes but eroded administrative efficiency and bred corruption. Meanwhile, the court's mandatory residence policy, while subduing the aristocracy, compelled the king to subsidize their lifestyles through pensions and gifts, further inflating costs that reached 8 million livres annually by the end of Louis XIV's reign in 1715, a period when France's national debt had ballooned to over 2 billion livres amid successive conflicts and failed harvests. As the 18th century unfolded under Louis XV, the palace's fiscal shadow lengthened, intertwining with broader economic pressures that foreshadowed revolutionary unrest. The regency of Philippe d'Orléans, following Louis XIV's death in 1715, exposed the treasury's dire state, prompting experiments like John Law's Mississippi Company scheme, which temporarily alleviated debts through paper money, but collapsed in 1720, eroding public trust in royal finances. Versailles, now a symbol of inherited extravagance, continued to absorb funds for renovations, such as the addition of the Salon d'Ercole and private apartments, costing millions more, while the kingdom grappled with the War of the Austrian Succession and colonial rivalries that drained coffers. Tax reforms attempted by controllers general like Etienne de Silhouette met resistance from privileged estates, leaving the Third Estate to bear disproportionate burdens. Peasants, already taxed at rates up to 50% of their income, faced famines in the 1760s and 1770s that highlighted the disparity between courtly opulence and rural destitution. The palace's gardens alone required an annual outlay of 1 million livres for upkeep, including the transplantation of exotic plants and the operation of fountains that guzzled water equivalent to the daily needs of Paris, resources diverted from agricultural improvements or poor relief that might have mitigated social tensions. By the accession of Louis XVI in 1774, Versailles had become an emblem of fiscal mismanagement, its hidden cost manifesting in a national debt exceeding 4 billion livres by the eve of the Revolution. Efforts by ministers like Jacques Necker to audit and reform, including his 1781 Compte Rendu au Roi, that revealed court expenditures of 36 million livres annually, nearly 6% of revenues, sparked debates over transparency and privilege. The American War of Independence, supported by France at a cost of 1.3 billion livres, compounded the strain, forcing loans at 7 to 8% interest that Versailles' symbolic authority could no longer fully legitimize. Nobles at court, insulated in their marble halls, petitioned for exemptions while the palace's infrastructure decayed. Leaking roofs and crumbling facades necessitated repairs that totaled 12 million livres in the 1780s, even as bread riots erupted in provinces starved of investment. This disconnect, where the king's domain consumed resources equivalent to the annual wages of 100,000 laborers, fueled Enlightenment critiques from thinkers like Voltaire, who had once praised Versailles but later decried its excesses in correspondence, underscoring how the palace's grandeur sowed seeds of discontent among a populace increasingly aware of the monarchy's financial fragility. In the shadowed corridors of Versailles, where candlelight flickered on gilded panels etched with scenes of triumphant battles, the weight of accumulated debt began to manifest in subtle erosions of royal authority during the final years of the Ancien regime. Louis XVI, inheriting a throne burdened by the extravagances of his predecessors, found the palace not merely a residence, but a voracious entity that demanded constant infusions from a treasury already hemorrhaging from international entanglements. The Queen Marie Antoinette, often scapegoated in popular pamphlets for the court's profligacy, oversaw additions like the Hameau de la Reine, a rustic farm hamlet constructed in 1783 at a cost of 2 million livres, where she sought respite in pastoral illusions amid manicured meadows and thatched cottages. Yet this private idyll only amplified perceptions of detachment from the kingdom's hardships. As grain shortages gripped the land in the late 1780s, triggered by poor harvests and speculative hoarding, the palace's cellars brimmed with imported wines and delicacies for nightly suppers attended by hundreds. Expenditures that totaled over 500,000 livres annually for food alone, drawing from funds that could have subsidized bread distributions in starving villages. Ministers like Charles Alexandre de Calonne, appointed in 1783, attempted to veil the crisis through creative accounting, issuing loans and suppressing reports of deficits. But the palace's unrelenting needs, from repairing the Grand Canal's embankments to hosting diplomatic receptions, exposed the fragility of a system where symbolic splendor clashed with economic reality. The interconnected themes of fiscal strain and social discontent wove through the fabric of pre-revolutionary France, with Versailles serving as both catalyst and symbol in the unraveling. The convocation of the Assembly of Notables in 1787, held within the palace's opulent halls to debate tax reforms, revealed deep fissures. Nobles and clergy, accustomed to exemptions, resisted levies that might encroach on their privileges, even as the king's domain exemplified the very inequalities under scrutiny. Calonne's successor, Loménie de Brienne, faced riots in Paris over rising bread prices while allocating 6 million livres for Versailles' upkeep in 1788, a sum that could have funded relief for the Third Estate, whose grievances swelled in cahiers de doléances compiled across the realm. These notebooks, submitted ahead of the Estates General, chronicled tales of peasants crushed by seigneurial dues and royal taxes, contrasting sharply with the court's insulated world, where fountains played to the rhythm of mechanical ingenuity, their waters pumped at great expense from the Seine. Enlightenment salons once hosted in Versailles' antechambers now echoed with whispers of reform from figures like the Marquis de Lafayette, who had witnessed Republican ideals in America, highlighting how the palace's costs not only depleted coffers, but also eroded the moral legitimacy of the monarchy in an era awakening to notions of equality and accountability. As tensions mounted, the spatial authority of Versailles transformed from a tool of control into a stage for confrontation, its vast grounds witnessing the inexorable march toward revolution. In May 1789, delegates to the Estates General convened in the Hôtel des Menus Plaisirs, a utilitarian annex near the palace, where the Third Estate's representatives, clad in somber black amid the nobility silks, debated amid the distant hum of courtly life. The palace's financial legacy loomed large in these discussions. Necker's revised estimates pegged the national debt at 4.5 billion livres, with Versailles' cumulative construction and maintenance since Louis XIV's era accounting for over 200 million livres, a figure that fueled accusations of royal mismanagement in fiery speeches by Mirabeau. The oath sworn in the nearby Jeu de Paume on June 20, 1789, marked a pivotal shift as commoners pledged not to disband until a constitution was secured, their resolve hardened by years of witnessing the monarchy's opulent isolation. Even as the royal family resided in gilded apartments overlooking gardens that required 200 gardeners and 1 million livres yearly, bastions of unrest formed in Paris, where the storming of the Bastille on July 14th sent ripples back to Versailles, prompting the king to recall troops whose payrolls further strained the budget. The humanistic toll of Versailles' hidden costs emerged in the lives of those entangled in its orbit, from laborers who toiled in its shadows to courtiers ensnared by its demands. Artisans like the cabinet makers who crafted Louis XV's intricate desks endured delayed payments amid treasury shortfalls, their workshops in the town of Versailles falling into arrears as royal commissions promised prestige but delivered insolvency. Peasants from surrounding villages, conscripted for corvée labor to maintain the estate's avenues, returned home to families burdened by taxes that funded such endeavors, their stories circulating in provincial markets and fueling a groundswell of resentment. Within the palace, servants numbering over 4,000 navigated a hierarchy of privilege. Their meager wages, often 200 livres per year, contrasting with the 100,000 livre pensions granted to favored nobles, a disparity that mirrored broader societal divides. As the National Assembly relocated to Paris in October 1789, following the Women's March on Versailles that compelled the royal family's departure, the palace stood eerily silent, its halls echoing with the ghosts of past grandeur, a poignant reminder of how unchecked ambition had precipitated a kingdom's downfall. In the aftermath of the royal family's forced relocation to Paris in October 1789, Versailles stood as a hallowed monument to the monarchy's faded glory, its vast chambers gathering dust while revolutionaries repurposed its spaces for assemblies and storage. The palace, once the pulsating heart of French absolutism, now echoed with the footsteps of guards and occasional visitors, its fountains silenced to conserve water amid national austerity measures decreed by the National Assembly. The financial repercussions of its construction lingered like a persistent fog over the new republic's efforts to stabilize the economy. Assignats, paper currency backed by confiscated church lands, flooded the market in attempts to pay off debts accrued under the Bourbons, including those tied to Versailles' opulent expansions. By 1791, as the Assembly debated the fate of crown properties, inventories revealed the staggering inventory of silverware, porcelain, and furnishings, valued at over 10 million livres, that had once adorned the halls, items auctioned piecemeal to fund the war against Austria and Prussia, conflicts ignited by revolutionary fervor, but rooted in the fiscal weaknesses exposed by the palace's burdens. Human stories intertwined with this decline. Former courtiers, stripped of pensions, scattered to émigré communities abroad, their letters lamenting the loss of a world where proximity to the king had defined existence, while local Versailles townsfolk, dependent on royal patronage, faced unemployment as workshops closed and gardens fell into neglect. The palace's transformation during the Revolutionary era underscored the profound cause and effect chain linking architectural ambition to political upheaval, as its hidden costs became overt symbols in the rhetoric of reform. In 1793, amid the Terror, the Committee of Public Safety briefly considered demolishing Versailles as a vestige of tyranny, but pragmatic voices prevailed, repurposing it as a museum and hospital for wounded soldiers, where beds lined the Hall of Mirrors, their occupants gazing at ceilings that once celebrated royal victories, now ironic in defeat. The financial audits conducted by the convention exposed layers of corruption from the Ancien regime, with records showing how controllers general had juggled accounts to mask Versailles' drains, contributing to inflation that eroded the assignats' value from par in 1790 to mere fractions by 1795. Peasants who had once labored on its grounds now formed part of citizen armies, their enlistment driven by promises of land redistribution from estates like Versailles, which spanned 8,000 hectares and had required feudal obligations abolished in the August decrees of 1789. This shift humanized the revolution's narrative, as individuals like the gardener André Le Nôtre's successors, who had tended the parterres for generations, adapted to new republican oversight, pruning hedges that no longer framed royal processions, but stood as relics of a bygone order. As the Directory gave way to Napoleon's rise in 1799, Versailles' fiscal legacy influenced the empire's administrative reforms, with the palace briefly revived as an imperial residence, its costs now managed through centralized taxation that echoed Colbert's earlier systems, but avoided the excesses of Louis XIV. Napoleon, acutely aware of the revolutionary backlash against monarchical splendor, allocated modest sums, around 500,000 francs annually, for restorations, transforming the Grand Trianon into a venue for diplomatic summits while leaving much of the main Chateau d'Ormont, a decision that preserved resources for military campaigns across Europe. The palace's atmosphere during this period blended melancholy with renewal. Visitors like Chateaubriand wandered its empty salons, evoking in memoirs the ghosts of courtiers whose lifestyles had precipitated the fall, while curators cataloged artifacts that told of fiscal overreach, from unpaid bills for marble shipments to ledgers detailing the 1780s repair costs that had pushed the monarchy toward bankruptcy. This era highlighted interconnected themes of continuity and change, as the financial structures strained by Versailles informed the Code Napoleon's emphasis on equitable taxation, aiming to prevent the disparities that had fueled unrest. The restoration under Louis XVIII in 1814 brought a tentative revival, yet the palace's hidden costs continued to resonate, shaping Bourbon policies wary of public expenditure. Allocating 2 million francs for refurbishments, the king sought to reclaim symbolic authority without reigniting revolutionary sentiments, hosting modest ceremonies in the Hall of Mirrors, where the Treaty of Versailles would later be signed in 1919, an ironic full circle linking 17th century ambition to 20th century reckonings. Throughout the 19th century, as France industrialized, Versailles became a national museum under Louis Philippe in 1837. Its maintenance funded by state budgets that drew from emerging railway revenues and colonial profits, contrasting with the agrarian tax base of the Ancien regime. Humanistic reflections emerge in the works of historians like Michelet, who in lectures described the palace as a monument to folly that had impoverished generations, underscoring how its grandeur had masked the suffering of those whose labors built it. From the 1680s workers who perished in marshy excavations to the 1780s artisans unpaid amid deficits. In the calm expanse of historical retrospect, Versailles endures as a testament to the intricate dance between power and economy, its stones whispering lessons of restraint amid ambition. The palace's pre-revolutionary finances, once veiled in courtly pageantry, now illuminate museums and archives, where visitors trace the threads from Louis XIV's sunlit visions to the revolutionary shadows that followed, a narrative woven through centuries of human endeavor and consequence.